Bitcoin's not going to solve the world's problems. What I'm saying is, if I give you clean water, it solves a bunch of problems. If I give you electricity, it solves a bunch of other problems. If I give you clean food, right, healthy food and sterile jars, it solves a bunch of problems. Even in the civilizations you don't agree with, I think you would agree that if we turn off the electricity, they have a problem. Right? If I kill the water and the power in New York City, everybody's going to die. It's just that simple, right? I mean, so what I'm proposing is we inject digital energy into the civilization. Bitcoin is digital energy. It's digital capital, right? And I'm telling you, I think it's worth $10 trillion. And I'm saying, if you have an economic problem, if you were running a factory and you were in debt, and I came to you in 1900 and you said, well, Mike, what should I do? I'm thinking about cutting the wages of all my employees, making them work twice as hard and whipping them occasionally, and then barking at the customers and denurturing the product because that's what I need to do to stay in business. What do you think? I would say, well, Tom, I'm an engineer. What I think is I'm really interested by what this Edison guy is doing with electricity. And I think you can rip out the coal, the coal powered steam engine in your factory and maybe electrify it. And then I think you ought to look at what Henry Ford did with the assembly line and the internal combustion engine. And maybe instead of whipping the people in your horseless carriage buggy whip factory and then, and then begging a politician to buy your buggy whips and your horseless carriages, maybe you ought to invent a car, and maybe you ought to do it with electricity, and maybe you ought to use this physics, and then maybe it'll be such a delightful product that, demand for the product will go through the roof. And that's what I think about this. I think that Bitcoin is a digital technology that solves an economic problem that's worth trillions of dollars. I don't think it cures cancer. I don't think it'll stop wars. People had wars after electricity and clean water. I'm just pointing out that Henry VIII dies of gout because he didn't have clean water. And of all the things that Henry VIII would have liked to have bought with all of his power, and he was the most powerful man in the UK, he would have liked that, right? This thing we take for granted, this thing that makes us go from living 32 years to living 80 years. Clean capital, clean money, digital money, high frequency, programmable money. It is a protocol for prosperity. And I think that if you're looking for a politically sound strategy, the most politically sound strategy is not to tell people that austerity is the solution or bludgeon them to death. It's just to introduce a new technology that delights and enriches everyone and spreads like wildfire. And I think Bitcoin is spreading like wildfire. Just like if it's a good thing, whether it's the internet or an iPhone or clean water or air conditioning or an automobile, you don't gotta bludgeon people. You don't gotta bark at them. The average person looks and they know why they want to drive in a car or fly in a plane or have air conditioning. I mean, I live in Florida. All of Florida is due to air conditioning, right? The entire state wouldn't be here without electricity and HVAC. And that is my contention with regard to digital capital. I think that the world's full of problems, but half of them are economic problems. And if you want to solve your economic problems, solve it with technology, which is egalitarian, utilitarian, right? That is nonpartisan. Because no one can agree on religion and political issues, but they can all agree that they would like to be more powerful, more prosperous, more comfortable, more capable. And generally, the only countries on earth that are anti-technology don't last long. Remember the Japanese, they denied gunpowder powder. That didn't work well. The Chinese tried to keep guns out of China. That didn't work well either. I mean, eventually, technology is coming to your shores, and if you resist it, your government's going to collapse and your ideology is going to collapse. So I think this is a very straightforward, practical approach to making the world a better place.
What do you think about Japan and what they're doing? Do you think that they'll move forward with that? Do you think that they have any other way out of the situation that they're in? And could Bitcoin be the solution to their whatever 40-year stagnation?
I think that adoption of Bitcoin, it starts with retail, then investors, then small corporations, then larger corporations. I don't think large governments will adopt it first. I think small governments will adopt it, but primarily it'll be adopted at the institutional level next. And I don't really think it's even necessary. I mean, I'm not holding my breath for that. I think that there are examples like Metaplanet in Japan that are Metaplanet. I think is the number one stock on the Japanese stock market. They're going to get noticed, and I think people in Japan will start to learn about Bitcoin. But it'll be a solution for the individuals and the families and the investors, and then it'll be a solution for the companies long before it's a solution for the country. Governments are normally the most conservative actors and the last to move. Just like any technology, right? Think about how all technology propagates. Your iPhone, your web browser, your electricity, or whatever. It starts with the early adopters, the innovators, and then the small companies and the startup. And the big companies, they dismiss it, and then eventually the big companies get threatened by it, and then they embrace it, and then after that, it ripples into government. But it's government normally when they try to do something, they're a little bit slower than normal.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Do you think that the red wave here is going to buck any of that trend in the US? Are we going to see a pretty gross acceleration in adoption of anything innovative? Or do you think that we'll get bogged down in the normal quagmire and the traditional system will still make it a slow?
I think that the US is now actually the worldwide leader in digital assets. I mean, we're going to catapult from being, 25, 30% of the way back from the pack, in the middle of the pack. We're going to catapult to number one because most of the rest of the world is fearful of innovation if they're fearful of getting ahead of the US. So even if it's a good idea, like all the ideas I just laid out, I mean, and a digital assets framework is a great idea. I think that other countries would be afraid to adopt a good one if they thought the US was more regressive. So now I think very progressive digital assets ideas will get adopted by the US. And I think the US has the economic capability, the financial power, the political power, and the technical power to commercialize all those. So at this point, the US has gone from being right in the middle and not very progressive to actually being number one, the greatest opportunity. I do think it's quite likely in the next 4 years we'll have an incredible crypto renaissance in the US. And as I just pointed out, I really think the US is positioned to dominate digital currency and digital capital. And it's a $10 trillion opportunity on the currency side, and it's a $100 trillion opportunity on the capital side. I don't think any other country has an opportunity that big. I think the US is really in the pole position at this point. And before November 5th, if you thought it was going to be a blue wave, you would have thought there won't be a digital assets framework, and the US is going to grudgingly accept Bitcoin, but they're not going to embrace the other ideas. But after November 5th, I think now it's more likely than not that we will get a digital assets framework. You will get digital tokens, digital securities, digital currencies, digital capital, digital exchanges, and the US will be the big winner in all those things. That's what I think now. Not without some political maneuvering back and forth and some negotiation and compromise. but it seems the writing is on the wall, and the path of least resistance right now is the creation of a multi-hundred trillion dollar digital assets ecosystem and a multi-hundred trillion dollar digital capital ecosystem as part of it. That's what I expect. Well, there's a lot of things going on in the world right now, right? There's 100 different industries, and there's a lot of dynamic questions, right? So solving the problem of space travel, and solving the problem of electric cars, and solving the problem of satellites, and solving the problem of government efficiency, and solving the problem of free speech, and solving the problem of digital capital, and solving the problem of digital currency, and solving the problem of war, and solving the problem of medicine, and solving the problem of health, and solving the problem of overregulation, and solving the problem of overbearing capital markets, and solving the problem of climate, and solving the problem of fill in the blank. I could go on for another 100 problems. That's a lot of problems. I think this administration has the greatest number of problem solvers we've ever seen. I think that Elon is the #1 sponsor of Bitcoin and the Magnificent Seven. I mean, if you look at it, right, take the top 7 companies in the world. Okay, which one has Bitcoin on the balance sheet? Tesla. Right? So truthfully, Elon is the leader in understanding digital capital, on the base. Tesla has Bitcoin, SpaceX has Bitcoin. So I think Elon's been a great advocate, but so is Vivek, Ramaswamy, and so is, I think David Sachs understands this, and I think the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, and Atkins, the head of the SEC, and Trump, both Donald Trump and Eric Trump, and Howard Lutnick, the head of commerce. So I think that you've got a lot of people that understand it. I think if you're parsing people's words and saying, did they say the perfect exact thing? Like I don't talk about the other 99 things. I don't utter my opinions on health and vaccines and foreign policy and the like, because you might not exactly parse your words correctly, or there might be someone that spent 100x as much time as you that's a bit more nuanced. So I think it's inevitable that when you are asked to opine on 100 subjects, you'll occasionally say, you'll communicate with a precision that leaves you open to criticism from someone, but I don't really get worked up over it.
And what do you think is going to be the intersection of AI and Bitcoin specifically?
AI represents digital intelligence. It's going to go into every product, every service, every company, everything. It's going to permeate everything in the economy. The result is there are going to be very valuable companies. And I think those companies, as they get more valuable, are going to buy Bitcoin. I think AI is going to fuel the capital market. So it's going to create lots of capital, lots of productivity. And I think that will flow into Bitcoin. And I think long term, the AIs will want to move money at a much faster speed. They'll want programmable, high frequency money, and that'll be Bitcoin. And so I think that the growth of AI systems will result in demand for digital capital, directly from the AIs and indirectly from the companies that create the capital.